Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Monday, July 6th. So, very nice way to start off the week. Very nice performance. S&P finished up 1.5%, and the Qs finished up. I should put all these in green at this point, but the Qs finished up 2.4%. Again, the Qs continue to lead. It's very impressive. And the diamonds were at 1.7%. I actually meant to highlight small caps. Small caps, I thought were going to be the big winner today. They did not. They did not have any follow through, and they actually sold off a bit through this session. So again, a little bit of profit taking in the small caps. Remember, the small caps heavy financials, heavy banks. So profit taking there, and the Qs continue to see the momentum where there's growth names. How long does this continue for? I have no idea. One of my thoughts, which we'll get into a couple stocks, but I think typically that we do see names run into earnings. We talked about this in the member weekend video, that names like Microsoft, names like Netflix, Amazon, they love to run these names into the report. There's some traders that look to trade earnings, but a lot of times the move has already been made going into earnings. So if it's a name that people really want to position to, and I think, of course, in this market, there's more of the haves versus the have-nots. Things like Amazon, Microsoft, etc. Those names, I think, are people want to position in those for earnings. But what we're seeing right now is they just may not let you in to do an earnings trade, and that may flip the once we get to that event, it could be more of what we did last quarter, which was selling premium. So I think that's just typically how it works. Is that the strong names, they're not going to wait for that earnings report. They're going to price it in. They're going to price in a strong report prior to earnings. And again, the reason why I'm jumping to earnings is because we want to always be forward looking, right? We don't want to be, look in the rearview mirror. We want to look to see when earnings is going to start and basically how to position for it. But that's going to be 7/16. So, we got 10 days away. And that's when all the big reports start. That's the first FANG stocks report is Netflix. It used to be Alcoa was the name that kicked off earnings, but now I think it's the banks, and then it's Netflix. Let's see when J.P. Morgan reports too. That should be the same week. JP Morgan does report the same week. It's going to be the 14th. So if we look at the calendar, so again, we're being forward looking here, just as we talked about in the weekend video. A lot of these names people are going to want to buy and position in, and I think that's some of what we're seeing right now, and that's next week. So so 10 days. That's going to be Thursday when that reports. When does Amazon report? Because again, they like to bunch all these names up. Amazon reports the week after that, so that's 7/24. So it'll be here before you know it. But I think that's basically what's going on with partly, and that will continue to happen. Microsoft reports the same week as Netflix, so that's just around the corner. Theme of the day. So 3 minutes into the video, and I don't even mention the theme of the day: buy the close and sell the open wins again. And again, not that many people really wanted to do that over the weekend, right? 3-day weekend. There's always a chance of some type of news, more or less negative news that could come out, and people just don't want to really do that trade. But that's how it works. The unpopular trade seems to work. This is a note that Lizanne Saunders reported. Again, I try to bring this stat out about once a week, because I just think a lot of traders, a lot of retail traders in particular, but it's institutional traders too, just are not familiar or positioned this way, right? It's very counterintuitive. A lot of people come in and they're doing the research in the morning and they're ready to trade for the day, and the majority of the move happens in the overnight session. So again, if you're only doing day trading and you think that you have full control day trading, sometimes full control isn't the best thing. The alpha remains in the overnight market. Now, again, put this in perspective. I'm not talking about any particular one day. We're talking about like a 20, 30-year pattern here. I'm always afraid when I mention this that someone's going to put a lot of money and buy the close and look to sell the open, and there's going to be some type of little bit of news, and the overnight, and we open up lower. That could always happen with this, but over time, this is how it works. And again, I think the reason why a lot of people switch to day trading, it's a lot of investor psychology. We've went over this before, but just very quickly, everybody has had that one time in their trading career where they went ahead and they held positions overnight, and there was some overnight news, and they came in the morning and they were down a little bit of money, and they're like, oh geez, I don't want to ever do that again because I can't control it over in the overnight market. And this is how investor psychology is very important in trading. But that one experience, even though it was one day out of many days that it doesn't happen, but that one day can scar a trader and basically change the way they trade. But it is what it is. It's just how it works. And if you look at this chart, this should be like hitting home with you, saying a light bulb should be going off, saying, wow, if I'm coming in and looking to day trade every time the market gaps up, 1%, and the alpha is just not there, right? You're really trying to, squeeze something that is very, very hard to do. Meanwhile, the overnight session, you just kind of have to learn to loosen the reins a little bit. And it also goes back to the thesis that the majority of the money is made just sitting in positions, right? That certainly, I manage two accounts. I talk about this all the time, but I've got one particular account that I'm just sitting in positions. It's called the tactical portfolio, and I've got names like Tesla in there, and I've got Amazon and Square, and those are doing really well, and I'm not trading in and out of those positions. The other account that I have is my trading account, and yes, I am holding swing trade positions there, options and bigger stock positions, because in that tactical portfolio I've got 30 names in there. But again, this should be hitting home. And a light bulb should be going off saying, wow, isn't that amazing, right? The blue is basically if you bought the open and sold the close, not a lot of alpha there. The other one is the unpopular one of buying the close and selling the open. So there it is. That's the second quarter performance. And again, we have the same thing again today. So what did the SPY do? It was up 20 basis points from open to close today, but overnight made 1.5%. So, or sorry, made 1.3% because I got to back that out. Same thing with Nasdaq. Nasdaq was a little bit better, right? Didn't move up 1%, but overall, 1.4%. And exact opposite. If you bought the small caps today, if you went long the small caps on the open, you were down 1%. So again, very, very important to kind of go through this. You can see it's kind of, as I'm looking towards the lower part of the performance from the open, it seems to be the same groups that are doing this, right? There's a couple different ones in there. Biotech actually sold off today, finished just barely positive for the session, but sold off 1.4% through the session. So those didn't perform very well. But I continue to see the oil and gas names, even though they finished positive for the day, they sold. They finished up just fractionally up 20 basis points, but they're selling off throughout the session. The utilities, I'm not really sure what's going on with the utilities, but they continue to move lower throughout the session too. So, interesting. Any bounces seem to, they're making lower highs. Right? It looks like we got a turn here. Again, they finished down 1.2% in a positive tape. What did finish really well today was the solar names. So a little bit different. Of course, the Chinese internet names, I think they sold off a bit throughout the session, but they still finished up 4%. If we resort this, and if we do this by column AA, all right, the Chinese internet names were up for a big move, and I sold some of my positions that I was holding in the Chinese internet names. What did I have? 2 or 3 positions on? So if we go into the trades, JD, I got out of, just took a target in this. I'm still long that one. NTES, which is a name I've been holding now for a couple weeks. So took profits there, and then I actually traded out of that one. I didn't like the that it was selling off throughout the session, so just decided that was good enough for NTES. So I got out of that one, and then a bunch of this, the semiconductors were something that we talked about in the weekend video. So members, of course, I do a lot of so my research. So again, talking about what I was saying about getting ready and pre-open. That's really not where you want to be doing. Your research. For me, it's a lot in the overnight session, at night, but also like during the day. We've talked about that too with this market. I've been telling traders, don't be afraid to come in the first hour and sell a lot of positions. Maybe if you really want to establish a trade in the beginning of the day, you can do that. I did that with PAGS today, but overall, like it's fine coming in, selling the open, in the first half hour, checking to see where things are, and then taking off, like if you want to, or if you're a part-time trader, there's no harm in like doing other work between, let's say, 10:30 and 2 o'clock, and then basically looking at the close and seeing how the close does, and then looking for the next overnight trade. So that's just basically how it works. So doing that research then throughout the session to kind of know what you're looking to do for tomorrow, and then of course I always look for trades. We put out 2 videos on the weekend: the macro video, which gives you a sense of the overall investment landscape, and then 2 single stock video with all the watch lists and actionable triggers that we put together. And I've been refining that as I go along. Today we did the Q&A. We talked about basically at this point, trying to ride some trades. Let's see, did we take out any of these VPOCs, by the way, for the S&P? There's still one. There's one up here, so it could be where we get to this week, 3180.89, and then I think there's still one here as well. Should be right around here. Just give it a second for Thinkorswim to grab all the history here, but there should be another upside VPOC for the S&P. You might have to go up a little bit further. Oh, there it is. 3183. I was a little bit off. So those are some upside targets to kind of look at for the week if we manage to continue to roll in this direction. 3183 and 3189 to the upside. But as always, I was a big net seller on Friday, but I mean you could see what I did today too. I still had plenty of trades on, and again, I was in the first half hour, all targets. I added this PAGS starter today. It's a name that was on the weekend watch list. Net, so even sold more here, put on a little bit of an AZN trade, but quiet for the rest of the day. Again, not the whole, trading very disciplined. Just for me, again, knowing that not forcing trades. Again, there were some day trading opportunities today. But I'm content with basically just managing the room for everybody, posting option activity and looking for some names that have some momentum during the day. But I've been rolling with this strategy now, and trying to be super disciplined. And hey, this is really working. And for the beginning of the month, if you've been following a lot of our trades, basically up every day, P&L, up every day this month so far. I know it's just the beginning of the month, but I seem to be making, and I think I talked about this in Friday's video, the beginning of the months have been much better for me. So, and then we've been getting a little bit of a lull mid-month. So maybe that happens again this month. And again, that's when earnings season is going to be. So make sure that you're, in my opinion, again, I'm not telling you what to do, not giving any advice or recommendations, but make sure you're locking some of this money up. One of the great things that you can do from time to time is just withdraw some money out of your account. That really kind of keeps you disciplined, rather than just watch, your cash balance increase. If you're doing this right, your balance is going up along with mine. But just take some money out. It kind of takes a little bit of temptation, and it's a nice little trick to do. And you could always put that money back, and your account manager as well should keep even though you're taking withdrawals, it should still keep the performance accurate. So that's kind of just the strategy, and we talked about that a little bit more in detail in the Q&A session. If names are going to continue to trend, we want to stick with the trend. Do I think Nasdaq is getting absolutely, overbought here? Yeah, I mean, I think that daily sentiment index DSI is over 90 now. So, you know, the whole goal is to basically continue to ride the trend, but just make sure that you are continuing to lock in some gains and messing with the profits. Right, that was a big thing that we talked about in the Q&A session. Is that days like this, you want to be messing with a portion of the day's profits as for day trades. If you want to day trade, right, just make sure you're not giving back what you earned in the beginning of the day. I think newer traders have a tendency to do that, right? Looking for trades when they're not there, or they're up a lot. They open up, they see their P&L, they've got big eyes, and they're like, geez, I can actually make this go up more. Well, sometimes you actually give it back by forcing trades and with the mentality of just trying to make your P&L go up. So again, that's enough. I haven't really reviewed too many trades because let's face it, the trades that we've set up have worked really nice. I'm not that big on doing the victory laps. Like, this is what I look to do every day. I know some guys, I'm not going to name any names on Twitter, but they love it, right? Their big thing is they're the best. I've seen a couple of guys that they are the best at victory laps. They're better at victory laps than actually putting the trade on. This is if you've been in this game for a while, then you should kind of act like you've been here before. And so that's why I'm not going to tout. I go through all the trades so that you could see, so that there's full transparency. But I expect to do this day in and day out. Some of these guys, it's like they pulled a rabbit out of the hat because they got a trade right when everything's going up. So, the whole thing again for us is to be, 1 to 2 steps ahead of the market. And I think that we've been that way. We've really been talking about individual groups. We talked about a lot last week and a little bit in this weekend's newsletter about these medical equipment names, right? So this DXCM, right, had a nice move, but it's not just this one. It's also Tandem, right, which made another new high again today, intraday. And then what's the other one that there's TMO, which is actually medical devices. But we talked about TMO a lot last week too, and look at the move, and you can see that on Twitter that I talked about that. The other one that we've been talking about too is the semiconductors. The semiconductors. We spent a lot of time talking about this group. We put out a trade idea for LRCX on Friday, but I think this has a lot more to go. I think this can go up to 166.43, right? We're just coming out of this area. So, very, very strong looking, the semiconductors, and they're not as extended, right, as the FANG names. If we look at the overall FANG ETF, FTN, it's already kind of popped out a bit. So at this point, for most of the FANG stocks, you're taking profits, riding the winners, with names like Amazon, but they're now getting blown out to the upside. So when I say blown out like this, they're way above the five. First of all, they're way above the 20-day moving average, and they're way above the 5-period moving average. So that is the place to start to be trimming. For me, not to be adding new trades, right? So we want to continuously find those groups which are just starting to come out of consolidation. And I think the semis, it's day one for that whole group. There's some individual names like NVIDIA that have been doing it for the last couple of weeks, but I think there's still opportunities there for a couple more days. But I have to tell you, it's one of the best things as well to see that different groups are coming out of consolidation one at a time, and they'll rally for 3 days to 4 days, and then they rotate out of those names. And there was some rotation today. You could look at names, some of the really hot names, like Shop last week blown out to the upside. So what happens? Profit takers come in a little bit, right? It's perfectly normal for this to happen, and it sets up the next buying opportunity. But it usually takes a little bit, so shop, let it come in and let it consolidate. Maybe it comes in. I would love it if it comes into 922. Also, if you look on the 1 hour, right, it's now broken into value on the 1 hour. So let this thing like chill out. I would love it if it, again, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen here, but let's hope it chills out for like a week and people kind of forget about it, and then it goes back up again. So that's the beauty of names, strong names and uptrends, is they break out, they consolidate for a little bit, and then they break out again. So let these names and a couple of the Chinese internet names, it was more Baba's turn today, and some of the bigger names, right? We've talked about how a lot of the smaller cap China names have done well, but these names actually saw some profit taking. Look at PDD, came in 6.4%. Again, perfectly normal after this run. I got a lot of questions about this in the trading room. Why is Billy down? Is there news on it? It's gone up from 27 bucks and it hit 51 today in a matter of 2 months. There's got to be some profit taking at some point. So, this is perfectly normal. I mean, that's a pretty ugly looking candle, but, it's going to be other names that are going to move up, and I think Bob is a good example of that. So you got to be like, and by the way, that's a really nice looking candle on BABA today, out of consolidation. I took the majority of my profits in BABA on Friday, which was kind of stupid, but that's okay. That happens. And like I said, I had a couple other Chinese internet names on, so I had like I said, JD on and NTES. Vips was another one too. But again, this thing came in too. So it looks like there was profit taking in smaller cap China internet names, and some of the bigger names actually performed better today. All right, guys, that's enough. That's long enough of a video for Monday. Have a great night, everybody, and I'll see you guys in the room.